Gareth, welcome back, man. Nice to have you. I'm really excited. It's been a while. How are you, man?
I'm doing really well, Paul. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, man, we have a lot to talk about because last time we talked, Bitcoin was under 40K. We were saying that we stressed so much we had to get over that 40K mark, and we did. So we got to talk about what's going on. We're going to be talking about the Bitcoin price, the technicals. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Fed, if it was priced in or not, a little bit about the Super Bowl, a little bit about Ukraine-Russia conflict, if you're up for that, and also what's up Canada? And did
Yeah.
that affect Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to talk about. So much is going on a daily basis. I mean, it's just really remarkable as an investor and a trader. You got to be paying attention to so many things these days. But that's what we're here for. We're here to dissect the charts, kind of clear out the nonsense, and try to get a good plain picture of it.
Yeah, exactly. So what's going on? So we broke 40K. I think we're in the range from 41.5, 40K psychological, 46K. I think we need to break 46K for this bull run to continue. If we break under 40K and close below it, I think there's a potential to go to the 36, then 30K level. I wanted to grab your thoughts on that and maybe discuss a little bit. Maybe you're seeing some things I'm not seeing here.
Yeah, sure. So do you want to, if you can, give me screen sharing, and
Sure,
I'll
let's do
love to
that.
pop my screen up and we can kind of go over all the levels here.
I don't give screen share to everybody, but I do for you.
Ooh, I feel very honored. Thank you. There
Dogs
we
my
go. So
screen.
let's take a look at the Bitcoin chart, right? So last time we talked, it was below 40,000. It was flushing. It was kind of in that downward draft, and basically what we ended up doing, and this is where charts get so cool, right? Is that when you connect the highs on Bitcoin, right? So we take these two highs, the April high and the November high, and I'm just going to extend that line out, and you'll see why in a second. If we look at a parallel line, look at how the low here of 33,000 touches the exact low, which again is parallel, perfectly parallel. This is why people that say charts don't matter are just insane, in my opinion, because they absolutely matter. Now, one of the things here to keep a note on is that as we have bounced, and I've been long Bitcoin, I did pare back about half my position at 44,000. But as we've been bouncing up, there's a new trend line I'm watching, which is this one right here. Right. And this is about at 46,000. And what you can see here is you have a pivot here, pivot right there, right here, and it retested right there and right here. So that's obviously a very big level. So if as we head up, watch the 46,000 level. If we can get through 46,000, you should have upside to about 50 to 52,000. It's also the midpoint. You see this dotted line. That midpoint is the likely next target. Now, if we can't get through 46,000, you're going to start to trade back down towards that 33,000 trend line down here. So right now, I think Bitcoin's in a positive light. I like the fact that, the NASDAQ, the tech stocks are starting to firm up. All that kind of stuff is going on. But certainly, you have to just watch these levels. They are so important when it comes to price action in Bitcoin.
Hey, Gareth, can you pull that chart up a second, please?
Yeah.
One more time. So if you look at the, can you just put those trend lines back again? Right.
Yep.
Would it be fair to say that if we get over the 46 mark, that actually will be a channel? We'll go into sort of a wedge or something between those two yellow lines you draw there. So we could
Yes.
race sideways and see where if we're going to break over the 52K after or under the 47.8K, is that it, or something like that later on as time
Yeah, so you're
progresses.
absolutely right. Is what if you can break through this upsloping trend line, you'll start using this line as support. So what the in technical analysis, resistance lines once broken become support lines, and support lines, if they're broken to the downside, becomes resistance. So absolutely, this would now become resistance if price trades in this range. You'd probably go up to this area, which is again between 50 and 52,000. And then you might just start going up and down and chopping and trying to figure out where Bitcoin will go next. And again, as we look around the world, we start looking and saying, okay, well, what's the Fed going to do? We know the Fed, the more they tighten, they draw liquidity out of the market, and that's a negative for Bitcoin. Or do we see maybe some of these recent headline, inflation numbers, maybe that's peak inflation. And if inflation starts to come down, they don't have to be so aggressive on tightening interest rates.
Also, is that an inverse head and shoulders I see where we are right now? If we take the bottom of the 33K as the head.
Yes, so that's a good eye on your part. Absolutely. So let me just go over here. I'm going to erase some of these lines because a head and shoulders. So an inverse head and shoulders, the neckline needs to be flat or declining. In this case, you can make a case for flat since you don't have a close on any candle above that line. So in that case, you can absolutely see the potential of an inverse head and shoulders here, which again would give you that break point of around 45 to 46,000 right here. And if you do that, then again, that is a bullish breakout short term. And I continue to think that that's a good possibility that we do maybe head towards that 50 to 52,000 level up there.
Yeah. And I'm very glad that you just said that there has to be a flat neckline. A lot of people are drawing all these heads and shoulders and everywhere, and they're just not. They're just like like
I know. And that really affects
around like this.
Yeah. And what investors need to understand is that when you follow the rules, the more accurately you follow the rules of a pattern, the probabilities are higher that it will play out. So if you kind of are play loosey-goosey on a pattern, maybe it's got a slight chance of playing out, but you're not going to see the same results over the longer term of utilizing it unless you're going by the rules.
Now, that said, would you say that the 52K or 53K in this case would be a dangerous pattern as maybe it's drawing a bigger heads and shoulders generally, or would you not be looking at that?
Yeah. So, I mean, what you're bringing up is kind of going to my midterm, and I call it midterm because my long-term view, if you're asking, 5 years out, unbelievably bullish on Bitcoin. I am. I really do think it's going to become the digital gold. More and more investors and big institutions will get involved. And ultimately, the price is going to be much, much higher than it is here today. But in the midterm, when you're looking like 3, 6, 9 months out, I am concerned that we're going to get this retrace to kind of this midpoint right up here. And then, in fact, it starts to form a bigger pattern, which could be a head and shoulders using this, right? So you could actually start to see this pattern, right? And then this would be the shoulder. So if we do go up there in price and then we curl over, you now have a new head and shoulders that you have to kind of monitor very, very closely. So I think you're 100% right. I still think that you need to see a flush out in crypto. As bullish as I am long-term, just like, if you were bullish on Amazon back in 2000, you lost 95% of your money, but if you held, you made thousands of percent back, literally thousands and thousands from the lows all the way to where it currently trades. And that's how I kind of envision this playing out for cryptocurrency, where you see this flush out, you get rid of a lot of the junk coins. I mean, there's literally over 10,000 coins today. I can't even tell you what any of them specifically do, except maybe the top ones. They need to be flushed out. Then money can focus and concentrate on the best of breed, and they can survive later on. The problem is when everything else collapses, it'll take down things like Bitcoin as well. So I'm still seeing a midterm price target 20 or sub 20,000 before the next big leg up.
Yeah, and I see another heads and shoulders pattern. If you start from just after July, as the left shoulder, and then the head is where you have it. Yep, and then the head is where you have it. So we need to
so the only tricky thing is if you did this wouldn't be a valid head and shoulders down here.
No, I just now that you just drew it.
This point.
Yeah, just now that you just drew it. Yeah, I see. Yeah, it was like, but yes. Okay, cool. So you just mentioned the Fed. There was a Fed meeting the other day that everyone was petrified about. Everyone was scared. I thought it was going to be priced in, and really we didn't see much of a difference, much of a move from Bitcoin. I want to talk about that. What happened at that Fed meeting? What did they say? What did they announce?
So they talked about, obviously being very aggressive on interest rate hikes. And we saw initially a move down in the NASDAQ, but Bitcoin held relatively well. And those are some of the keys that as an investor, a swing trader, I start looking for, right? I want to see when you have two assets that trade up and down together, like tech stocks and Bitcoin or crypto, you want to look for that divergence where one stays stronger when the other one weakens. And we did absolutely see that. And that was a key signal that you were going to likely see a move up in Bitcoin. And we obviously did see that. So very important to kind of keep an eye on that. Now, in 5 or 10 years, do I think tech stocks are going to move with Bitcoin? No, I think at some point, Bitcoin becomes more like gold, which when we saw the fear of a Russian invasion just the last couple of days, gold shot up and broke out, you could arguably say, to the upside, while the tech assets took a bit bigger hit there. So I think that's the long-term way that Bitcoin's going to trade. But in the short term, it's still a risk asset. Anytime you have an asset that drops 80% every bear market, people are going to treat it like a risk asset.
Of course. Of course. Do you think, so what was, do you know any details that just for the people watching here, like what was said in that Fed meeting? Then we can talk about Ukraine, Russia after that. I think that's something interesting I want to talk to you about. So what exactly did they announce?
Yeah, so they basically, from what I know from the last Fed meeting, which I think was a couple of weeks ago at this point, was that they basically said we're gonna act aggressively, be ready for us to act aggressively on inflation, and again talking about raising rates, needing to raise rates maybe sooner, kind of being that more aggressive based on the fact that a lot of these economic numbers we're getting, the inflation numbers. We even got one this morning, which was so incredibly hot, the PPI number, which is the producer price index, and it was close to 10% inflation on the producer side. And that ultimately gets passed to the consumer. So again, the Fed is looking like they have to act quickly here to kind of curb inflation. My fear is by acting quickly, are they going to then send the economy into a recession? And then you start this whole thing about, okay, well, which one are they going to choose? Low inflation and a recession, or higher inflation and the market going up and lifting us out of a recession? It's not a good situation longer term.
Meanwhile, they're still printing, right?
Yes, they are to some extent, right? But they're tapering, right? So they're printing less and less. They're kind of, they're trying to take the drugs away from the patient in a slow manner, so you don't see the withdrawal symptoms that can happen when you go cold turkey on something. And that's what they're trying to do. But I mean, let's be honest, we've seen the stock market be a lot more volatile ever since they announced tapering. So it is being more volatile.
So let me ask you something, because you're in America, I'm in Greece. There's a bit of a difference here. They had an emergency meeting on Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Right. Was anything announced after that meeting?
So from what I understand, nothing came out, but I believe we're supposed to see the transcripts tomorrow. So again, just be ready for that. Again, I don't have that confirmed, but that's what I did hear. So it seems like they had a meeting, and after every meeting, like 2 weeks later, they give the minutes of the meeting. I would assume that would be something that they would do, and it's definitely something you want to watch, because after the hot inflation number this morning, you could definitely see the Fed acting more hawkishly and potentially saying, "Hey, listen, we could be bumping those rates by 50 basis points in that March meeting," which is just really just about a month away at this point.
Do you think all of this, any of this is priced in? Because I didn't, again, everyone was waiting for all hell to break loose. And I saw the Bitcoin price. It really wasn't, it was holding up pretty well, even with the conflict and everything.
Yeah. So the markets are amazing at adapting, right? The first time the Fed, or the first few times the Fed talks hawkishly, the market freaks out. But then eventually we're like, okay, well, we heard that last month. We heard it the month before, where there's nothing new. So as long as that's the case, the markets seem to be immune. The bigger question would be is if we started to really price in a much more aggressive Fed than we're even anticipating. But the market is amazing at quickly adapting to what it thinks is going to happen. And then the only things that changes is when those expectations get adjusted, and then the market has to quickly adapt again with a big move.
Got you. And as for the Ukraine-Russian conflict that's going on right now, this is something, though, that even if it actually goes down, in my experience, wars overseas don't affect the stock market long term, do they? They just don't.
No, I mean, historically, they haven't, at least over the last 50 years or so. In fact, sometimes they can be a positive for the stock market in that, not only do you have to build supplies and, create supplies for that conflict, but you also have a tendency where, if we saw an oil price shock that hurt the economy, it's a great reason for the Fed to say, hey, listen, we're going to be a little bit more dovish in the near term. And then the market gets all excited because, the fighting isn't here in the US. So it's like, okay, well, we have a dovish Fed, but nothing in the US in terms of consumer spending is changing. And that can be a positive. So you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, again, the oil issue is the big question, and how much that impacts the global economy and the domestic economy.
Right. And what do you think this is going to do for Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin is still like a child here. We don't know how it's going to act. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about Bitcoin actually, anytime you see a global conflict, I think Bitcoin is the ultimate winner, right? Because, and I was talking with some other people about this, is a lot of people were surprised thinking, oh, Bitcoin might sell off. But if you think about it, if you're in Ukraine or you're in any of these conflict regions, it's almost easier to hold Bitcoin and then be able to flee to a different country and just access your Bitcoin. And all of a sudden you have your wealth transferred to anywhere in the globe that you want to go versus taking suitcases of money, right? I mean, it's going to be harder to get away with that. So again, in the near term, like you said, it's a very new asset. And it's going to get this whippy wild moves. But I think the more conflict, the more lack of kind of, feelings that governments are in control or that there's any stability, that's always going to be a positive longer term for something like Bitcoin.
And do you think Russia is also stocking up on Bitcoin here, or do you to get away from sanctions or not?
Yeah, that is a good question. I part of me wonders if, how much can they really put in? I mean, can you put $100 billion in Bitcoin very easily right now without affecting the price? And I think right now it's probably a little harder to do that. Not to say they're not accumulating a little bit, but I'm sure there's other ways. I know they've been buying gold for a long time as well to kind of diversify out in that respect. But yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one because Bitcoin is still in its infancy. It doesn't have the liquidity yet where you can get in very easily. It's not like Apple that's, $3 trillion and tons of shares are available where you just buy 100 million and you're good to go.
All right. The other thing I want to ask, there was recently, I can't remember the number off of my head, but the American government seized, I think it was a couple of billion in Bitcoin or 1.7 Bitcoin or a billion in Bitcoin or something from, was it Bitfinex?
Yeah, it was. I think it was from a couple. There was a couple here that were trying to launder it, I guess, and then it got seized. But incredible size. But I think they did get it from Bitfinex or one of those, which is originally where they hacked and stole it from. But yeah, I mean, what an amazing story. And then now the government has this, and the question you have to think about is, does the government sell it? And if they do, does that? I mean, if they were to dump that amount of Bitcoin, it would materially impact the price on Bitcoin, at least for a day or two, right?
Yeah.
So as an investor, I'm kind of on the lookout. Like if all of a sudden we saw a big dip in Bitcoin that was unexplained, I might be a buyer in that scenario and say, okay, this maybe is the government and it should snap back once the market absorbs this amount of Bitcoin. But yeah, really fascinating stuff, going on in that respect.
Do you think they should give it back to the people? First of all, I don't think they can give it back to anyone because worldwide. I don't even know if they can actually send or allowed to send worldwide assets or if people will claim it. But would you think they would send it back to the people that had it on the exchange or anything like that? Or do you think that's being a bit too optimistic with the people that got it stolen from?
Yeah, and I think the government would prefer to do that. I think, this leads me into that other question of, does Bitcoin and does the crypto market need more regulation? And I really think that if you're going to build, and this comes to what does the government want too? Does the government want Bitcoin to be an asset, right? Or does it want to destroy it? And that's another good question to get into. But the bottom line is if Bitcoin is going to survive and thrive, you need to have regulations. You need things in place where if someone gets robbed, it gets back to them, or at least they get made whole in terms of like FDIC insurance, which is what we have here in the United States. Like if you have a stock account in the United States and someone, hacks into your account and steals your money, you actually get it back from the government. In crypto, that's not the way it is. It gets hacked, it's gone. And I think that makes a lot of investors, including institutions, very scared. There's so much hacking going on in this world today, makes them very, very scared to be invested, at least sizably, in something like a crypto asset. So again, I think the government should give it back. I think that they would like to. Can they find everyone? That's the next question. But that would be the right move. Absolutely. And I think the government wants to do the right thing. I mean, they want to stand up and be that shining star of doing the right thing.
Right. It's good for publicity as well.
Yes.
Do you think you saw what happened with Canada recently? Now we're technical analysts mostly. Okay. Well, I think I'm 80% technical driven. I don't know, probably the same or more probably for your side. But do you think what happened recently in Canada with basically martial law? That's basically what it is, right? You can name it what you want. That is martial law. A bit extreme, in my opinion. Do you think that had and the announcement of freezing accounts and regulating cryptocurrency even more, or domestic terrorism and all that stuff? Do you think that impacted Bitcoin price to the upside, or do you think it's non-event in this case?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a tricky one. We've seen Bitcoin generally rise over the last 3 weeks. So that would indicate either there was no impact or a little bit of a positive impact. I think, again, anytime that the government comes in or any government comes in and decides like, hey, we're going to impose these rules and we're going to do this, and it's more like that martial law. It's just one more good thing for Bitcoin, right? I mean, people that can stand up and say, okay, well, I'm going to leave the country and I can access my Bitcoin from this country that's a lot more lenient. It's absolutely going to be a positive. And then it brings you to these other questions, which is something we've dealt with in the United States as well with vaccines and vaccine mandates. And then where does it go with like social good versus individual liberty, right? And this is one of those discussions that I don't think is a win-win for anyone. Right. But at the same time, you have to say, all right, well, you had the truckers and everything like that. And if it's going to cause more inflation and the whole country ends up paying higher prices, which could amount to billions of dollars, at what point does it then, do you say as a government, okay, well, now you're causing harm to a lot of people because they can't afford to buy, goods. It's just such a messy thing versus, it is a mess, man. And honestly, I don't think there's any good answer. There's got to be a fine line in there where it's like you do it for the country, but then you also have your liberty. But I honestly don't know where that is.
Well, according to, in my view, as for Canada, what happened there, I think that people that when you say you're going to ban cryptocurrency or regulate it or stop it or become more tougher, you have to know about crypto to understand the benefits, and they can't. So I don't think it had that much of a positive outcome as people expect, even though, or maybe there was speculation of, my dog just came in to visit, but maybe there was speculation of, he loves listening about Bitcoin all the time.
I love it.
He's a bit cool. So,
nice.
Right. So it's okay. So the question is basically, give me a second. It's okay. Yeah. So basically the question is, my dog just threw me off guard here.
No
I think people speculating that what Bitcoin can do as a proof case was more speculation for the price to rise rather than actual Canadians buying it, even though I'm not saying some didn't. Right.
Yeah. And I'll just interject here. And I think like the most important thing, at least here in the United States, is that you now have a ton of jobs that are being generated based on cryptocurrency. So, for instance, Texas is becoming the hub of mining after China banned it. It's now become the hub of miners here in the United States. In fact, most of the globe, it's one of the big hubs. And as soon as you get jobs dependent, the politicians are going to be much more lenient on regulations. They're not going to want to ban it because, number one, it costs them votes. And then number one, it's just overall super unpopular when people are going to be laid off because of it. So, I've even heard that politicians here in the United States own Bitcoin now. And that's the best thing to hear, because they're not going to be voting to restrict it, abnormally. And again, I think some regulation is really good and helpful. But again, you don't want that over-regulation, that overreach.
So, yeah, I'm actually bringing a former state senator onto the channel to talk about this. And he actually knows personally, has met Donald Trump, Obama, so on. And he's going to be talking about a lot of politicians. They actually have cryptocurrency, a lot of them. So did you watch the Super Bowl?
I watched a little bit of it. I got kids, so I'll just say that I didn't make it till the end. I fell asleep.
What do you think of all the ads about the Super Bowl ads with cryptocurrencies in there and everything? Would you think that helps? Do you think it's going to be like a couple of days of upside and it's going to go back down? Do you think that over the next few days they'll be buying of it? What do you think, Gareth?
Yeah, so this is one of the most interesting things about this is that, I've likened earlier in this interview, we talked about the relationship with the .coms and potentially what's coming for Bitcoin. And interestingly enough, in 2000, the Super Bowl was known as the .com Super Bowl because there were 14 ads for .coms in 2000, right? And so what's fascinating about this is that you had so many, I don't know if there was 14, but there was an abnormal amount of cryptocurrency ads at the Super Bowl. And we know Coinbase was one of them and so forth. But the key is that after that Super Bowl, you saw this massive collapse in .coms. And a lot of the dot-coms, in fact, I think 5 of the 14 commercial companies went out of business. And then I think only about 5 survived and really thrived. But again, the question is, are you seeing a repeat of that? It's kind of fascinating because there's so much money that's come into crypto where they can afford these crazy ads in the Super Bowl. But then also, is history repeating in that sense?
How long after did the dot-coms collapse?
So this is what's even more freaky about it. Let me show my chart with this, right?
Yeah,
so
please.
let's go to Amazon, because Amazon's the that's the perfect one to really go for in terms of being the biggest. So we're going to go back here, and what you can see on this is that when the Super Bowl was, which was, end of January, early February, this is where Amazon was. So it already had pulled back from about $110 to about $65. And then look at what it did after that. I mean, it just, it basically went to $5 down here.
That's a weekly price. So it went up a little bit more.
Yeah, it's the weekly price, right? It's the weekly price.
And when was the Super Bowl exactly, and which candle?
It was right. Let me see here. Here, this right in here. So January, it was kind of right in this. See this green candle right here? That little pop might have even been caused by the Super Bowl, for all I know. But the point here, what's amazing here is that you were already about 30 to 40% off of the highs when the Super Bowl occurred. And if you go to Bitcoin,
it's the same.
How far off of the highs are you on Bitcoin? And the answer is you're basically 30 to 40% off the highs now. Amazingly interesting stuff to just see the kind of how things are choreographed.
But according to that candle, we have a week's upside.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe a couple of weeks, who knows? And again, doubtful that everything's going to play out exactly as is, but it's just, these type of things make you say, like, okay, is this repeating? And again, if you look at the fluff and dot-coms, it's important for people to put it in perspective. In the 90s, I started trading, late 90s, when this was going on. And, everything you heard about was how the internet was going to change the world. And they were right, by the way. Yep. And how this was, and these crap companies came public that were like run out of their parents' garage. And they got these crazy valuations. Interestingly enough, at the height of the dot-coms, the approximate market cap of all dot-coms added together was just under $3 trillion. In November, when we were at the highs on Bitcoin, the market cap just passed $3 trillion for cryptocurrency. So again, these similarities freak me out, but they're so exciting to kind of see.
They are. Let's see what happens this time. Because they say it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So maybe the thing was the same, but it just goes up. So you can't really base it off that. But you can take caution and watch it carefully.
And I think that's the lesson, right? Is that history should give you at least the cautious side. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but if it does, you want to be prepared and understand why it's happening.
Awesome. Everyone, please like this video. Subscribe to Gareth Soloway's channels and social media. I'm going to leave the links right up here in the description down below. Subscribe to this channel if you got any value from it. Gareth, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Paul, so much. I hope to see you again soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.